Hey everyone, and welcome back. Are you getting ready for those GCSE English Literature exams? Well, we're here to help you absolutely smash the love and relationships poetry section. Today, we're doing a deep dive into Before You Were Mine by Carol Ann Duffy.
Oh, it's a great poem, isn't it?
Yeah,
There's so much we can unpack and hopefully help you guys understand it a bit better for your exams.
absolutely. I was just thinking, haven't we all looked at like those old photos of our parents, back in the day and kind of wondered who were these people before they were just mom and dad? And I think that's kind of the heart of this poem, right? A daughter imagining her mother's life before she was born.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. It's like we get to time travel a bit with this poem. It opens with this really vivid scene. The mother is laughing with her friends on a street corner 10 years before the speaker was even born. And Duffy even describes her polka dot dress blowing around. It's like, we're right there with them.
It's so visual, isn't it? And then bam, Duffy just hits us with this one-word sentence, Marilyn.
It's a powerful image, right?
Yeah, it's like, whoa, hold on a second. This isn't just any mom. She's being compared to Marilyn Monroe.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What do you think Duffy's trying to say about the mother by linking her to Marilyn Monroe?
Well, I mean, Marilyn was this huge icon, right? Especially in the 1950s when this poem is set. She represented glamour, freedom, and a kind of rebellious femininity. Maybe the speaker sees her mom as someone who had to give up some of that sparkle when she became a mother.
That's a really interesting point. And it links really well with this phrase that keeps coming up in the poem, before you were mine. It feels almost possessive, doesn't it? Like the speaker is both fascinated by, but maybe a little bit resentful of her mother's past.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like she's almost blaming her own existence for like taking away some of her mother's freedom. Is that what Duffy's getting at?
It's definitely open to interpretation. And that's what makes it so great to study, for your GCSEs. You
Yeah.
can analyze the language and explore the different perspectives. Think about the speaker's tone. Does she sound angry, sad, nostalgic? All of these things.
Good point. And I'm sure those are all things that the examiners will be looking for in your answers. So we've got this contrast between the glamorous Marilyn image and then this possessive phrase, before you were mine. What else is Duffy doing to build this picture of the mother's past?
Well, she uses a lot of sensory language, which makes us feel like we're actually there.
Right.
Duffy describes the mother's fizzy movie tomorrows and her high-heeled red shoes. She even says that the memory of the mother's perfume is clear as scent.
It's like she's really trying to bottle up all that excitement and possibility of her mom's youth, isn't it? It makes you wonder what happened to that carefree girl.
Exactly. And Duffy doesn't shy away from showing us that shift. Later in the poem, we see the mother being scolded by her own mother for coming home late. There's a real sense of tension there between the carefree fun of her younger years and the expectations placed on her as a young woman in that era.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's like that old saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? Maybe that's what the poem is really about. The difficult choices women face and how society can sometimes limit their options.
Now you're thinking like a true GCSE English literature student. Examining those bigger themes, that's how you really impress those examiners.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? How Duffy just uses these little snapshots of the mother's life to kind of build this bigger picture of what it was like for women back then. And, context is key for your GCSE analysis. You always want to think about the social and historical background of a poem.
Oh, that's a great tip. So we've talked about the Maryland image, the possessive language, the sensory details.
Hmm.
What other techniques does Duffy use to create this contrast between the mother's past and her present?
Well, there's this really interesting bit where the speaker describes learning to dance from her mother on the way home from Mass. It's quite a sweet and tender image, isn't it? But it feels very different from those earlier scenes of her dancing in a ballroom, with 1,000 eyes watching.
Yeah, almost like the mother's been tamed in a way, right? Like motherhood has brought with it a whole set of new rules and expectations.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it kind of goes back to those societal constraints that we were talking about earlier. Religion was a huge part of life back then,
Mhm.
and there were very clear ideas about how women should behave, especially mothers.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if the speaker's a little bit resentful of that. Like she sees her mom as this amazing, vibrant woman who's been forced to kind of shrink herself to fit in.
That's a really insightful reading of the poem, and it shows that you're really thinking critically about the text. And remember, there's no one right answer in English literature.
Yeah.
It's all about developing your own interpretation and then backing it up with evidence from the poem.
So we've got a sense of longing for the past, a bit of resentment, maybe some guilt too. How does Duffy bring all of those emotions together towards the end of the poem?
Well, there's this really heart-wrenching line where the speaker says, "Even then I wanted the bold girl winking in Portobello before I was born." It's like she's yearning for a version of her mother that she never even knew, a version that maybe doesn't even exist anymore.
Gosh, yeah, it almost makes me want to cry. It's like she's realizing that just by coming into the world, she might have unintentionally changed her mother forever.
Yeah, and that idea of change is really central to the poem's message, isn't it? It explores those complexities of the mother-daughter relationship, the sacrifices and compromises that come with parenthood, and the way that our past shape who we are today.
It really is a poem that makes you think about your own family, your own history, and all the unseen forces that have shaped your life.
Absolutely. And that's what makes Before You Were Mine such a brilliant choice for the GCSE Love and Relationships anthology. It's a poem that speaks to universal themes and emotions, but it also offers so much in terms of poetic techniques to analyze.
Oh, speaking of techniques, there's one more we haven't really touched on yet, and that's Duffy's use of flashbacks, jumping between those different time periods. It's like she's piecing together a puzzle, trying to make sense of her mother's past.
Yeah, those flashbacks are so important to the poem's structure and how it makes us feel. They create a sense of layered memories, like looking through a photo album and trying to imagine the stories behind each picture.
Yeah, it's like we're seeing the mother's life through the speaker's eyes, with all of its mysteries and unanswered questions.
And that sense of mystery is what keeps us hooked, isn't it? It makes us want to know more, to delve deeper into the mother's past and try to uncover all of her secrets.
It's like we're all amateur detectives trying to solve the case of the missing Marilyn.
All right, before we get too carried away with our sleuthing, I think it's time to wrap up this section.
Yes, let's pause here for a moment and have a think about everything we've learned so far. And when we come back, we'll pull all those threads together and discuss how you can actually use this knowledge to ace those GCSE exams.
All right, GCSE detectives, we're back. And this is the final part of our Before You Were Mine deep dive. So we've gone through the poem's themes and Duffy's clever techniques, and we've even done a bit of time traveling to uncover the secrets of the speaker's mum. Yeah, we have covered a lot, haven't we? But let's think about how you guys can actually use all of this to really shine in your exams.
Yeah, because let's be real, that's why we're all here, right? To get those top marks. So any tips for how we can tackle this poem in an exam setting?
Oh, absolutely. First things first, remember that every little detail in a poem is there for a reason. Duffy's like this master chef, carefully picking each ingredient. She's using this vivid imagery, strong word choices, and even that structure of the poem to create a really specific effect.
So it's not enough just to say, oh, look, a simile. We have to actually explain why she used it and what it adds to the poem's overall message.
Yes, spot on. So, for example, when Duffy compares the mother to Marilyn Monroe, don't just mention the comparison. Go deeper. Ask yourself, why Marilyn? What does she symbolize? And how does that link to the themes of the poem, like freedom and societal expectations and the impact of motherhood?
It's like those explain your answer questions you get in Max, isn't it? You get points for showing you're working.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The examiners want to see that you're not just spotting the techniques, but that you're analyzing their effect and connecting them to the bigger picture.
Okay, so let's say there's a question about the relationship between the speaker and her mother in Before You Were Mine. What sort of things should we be focusing on?
Well, you could talk about that recurring phrase, before you were mine, and how it creates that sense of both admiration, but also resentment. You could analyze the speaker's tone, too. Does she sound accusatory or nostalgic, or maybe a bit of both?
Oh, and what about those flashbacks? We were talking about those earlier. They show us glimpses of the mother's past and how the speaker tries to put all those pieces together.
Yes. And remember those sensory details that Duffy uses. They're not just there to make the poem sound pretty. They create this powerful contrast between the vibrancy of the mother's youth and maybe the more subdued reality of her life as a mom.
So we basically need to be thinking like Duffy herself. Why did she choose those specific words? Why those images? Why that structure? What was she trying to achieve?
Exactly. And remember, guys, practice makes perfect. The more you analyze poems, the easier it becomes to spot those little nuances and really connect the dots.
And that's what the deep dive is all about, right? Giving you the tools and the confidence to really tackle those GCSE exams head on.
Absolutely. We've only just scratched the surface of Before You Were Mine today. But hopefully this deep dive has given you a good foundation to build on for your own analysis.
It's like we've given you the map, and now it's your turn to go out and explore the territory. Read the poem again, make some notes, ask yourself some questions, and don't be afraid to come up with your own interpretations.
And most importantly, enjoy the process. Poetry can be a really powerful way to express yourself, and it can give you some amazing insights into what it means to be human. So even though you're studying for exams, don't forget to take a moment to appreciate the beauty and the depth of the poems that you're reading.
Well said. So we've come to the end of our deep dive into Before You Were Mine. But this is just the beginning of your journey with the GCSE Love and Relationships anthology. There's a whole world of poetry out there just waiting to be discovered. So keep exploring, keep those questions coming, and keep those analytical minds of yours sharp.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Yeah.
And until next time, happy studying.